Welcome back, guys. Today I want to explore one of the modules provided by the community, and that module is the Pinia module. So I'm going to show you how you can actually incorporate the Pinia module into your Nuxt application. Let me just go to the documentation. This will take you to the Pinia website. And if you click on the get started button and then go down to the server side rendering SSR section, you see a Nuxt.js section. Cool. So what I'll be showing you today is just a simple website, if you want to call it that, where I implement authentication. So if I'm logged out, I cannot go to the profile page. You can see where it redirects me instantly to this home page or sign in page. And if I click on sign in, then I'm redirected to the profile page. And if I try to go back to the sign in page, it redirects me to the profile page because I'm already signed in. Cool. So, without further ado, let's just jump into the code. All right, so we have VS Code open, and I'm just going to go ahead and create a new Nuxt application. So we type in npx nuxt init and then the name of the folder, but I already have the folder open that I want to create my project in. So I'm just going to use a full stop. Press enter. And this creates the Nuxt application. These are all the files that you get with a new Nuxt application with this init command. So we want to go ahead and install the dependencies. You can use npm, but I'm going to use yarn. I switched from npm to yarn because I think it's better. Cool. So if you're a npm user, then go ahead and use npm. I'm a yarn user, so I'm going to use yarn. All right, so all the dependencies installed. Let's go ahead and clear the terminal. And next, we want to go to the Pinia website, and we're going to go to, let's see, where is it? Here. So from the Nuxt website, if you go to nuxt.com, click on modules. Yeah, reload that. Then we have the Pinia module. It's one of the top modules. So if you go to the documentation, like I said, click on get started, go down to this section, the server side rendering section, click on Nuxt, then it will show you how you can actually add Nuxt to your, or add Pinia rather, sorry, to your Nuxt application. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy the yarn command, right? If you're an npm user, you can copy this one. Let's go back to our code base, and we're going to paste that in. We're going to add that there. Once it's added, then we'll just go back to the Pinia website or documentation, and like it says here, if you're using npm, you might encounter an solve or resolve unable to resolve dependency tree error. In that case, add the following to your package.json file. So if you're using npm and you run up into this resolve error, just add this to your package.json file. Cool. So once it's installed, we can go ahead and add the Pinia Nuxt module to our modules array. So let me just go ahead and do that. So right now we can just open this file, and then we want to paste this right here. And I realized that my Nuxt.r extension is not on the left, so I'm gonna reload the window, and it should come up. There it is. Nice Nuxt extension. You should use this extension if you are a Nuxt 3 developer. All right, cool. So we have the module added. Just for basic styling, I'm going to add a Tailwind CSS module, but I'm not going to add it manually. I'm going to use the Nuxt extension. So I'm going to open my command palette, type in frame, and you can see the option to configure CSS framework. I'm going to use Tailwind. I'm going to check all of these boxes to install the module, create the config file, and create the CSS file. So I'm going to click OK. And it will do its thing. So it's going to add the module, install the different dependencies, create the files, and then it will actually open the config file for Tailwind. So here it is, the Tailwind config file. Now to my configuration, I'm just going to extend the container configuration. So I'm going to make it center, and I'm going to increase the padding. So for this padding, I'm going to say the default should be 1 rem. I'm just going to allow GitHub Copilot to determine different sizes that I use. Cool. Click on save, and that's it for Tailwind. Well, almost it. I realized that the module doesn't actually add the semicolons to the end of these things. So I'm going to add them here. Click on save. And now that's it for the Tailwind CSS module. Next up, we want to configure the app.view file. This will give us the Nuxt welcome component. So if I should run this app now, so let's say yarn dev, right? So the app is running. If I should open localhost 3000 in my browser, see where the application is starting up, and it gives me the welcome page from, or the welcome component from Nuxt that's shipped with the init command by default. But we don't want to use this. We want to use our own page, right? So we're going to go back to our application. Let's stop the server. We're going to say that we want to use the Nuxt layout, and this snippet is coming from the Nuxt extension, another reason to get it. And the Nuxt page, and of course you want to add your loading indicator so that your user knows when you are making a request to transition to another page or something like that. So we're going to save this, and then we're going to come here, right click, and we're going to select create Nuxt project directories. Now the directories that we want the pages directory, we want the plugins directory, we want the middleware, we want the stores because we're going to use Pinia, and let's see if we want anything else. I don't think we need anything else, so we can go ahead and create these. And you can see it just added the different folders. So the middleware folder, pages folder, and it created an index of view page, the plugins folder, and the stores folder with nothing in it. Cool. So first thing that we want to do is actually create our store. But before creating the store, let's do some configuration with Pinia. All right. So we go to our Nuxt config, and we're going to say, hey, Pinia, right? I need you to do this. I need you to auto import the define store function that comes with Pinia. So we're going to put that here, and we can see in the documentation where it tells us to do this. Let me just close this one. So if we want to auto import stuff, we can just use this. And if you want to rename the import, then we can use this syntax. Cool. So we're going to go back to our code, and we want to auto import the define store composable function that comes from Pinia. Also, we want to tell Nuxt that it should import everything from this stores folder. So if you want to add auto import to your project for folders that aren't supported by Nuxt from the get-go, then you can add the folders to the dirs array. And we're going to say that we want stores to be one such folder that everything from root files are auto imported. Now we have nothing in it now, but we'll add our store to it shortly. So everything that's within this stores folder will be auto imported. Cool. So we save that, and that's it for our Nuxt config. Now to our stores, right? So for stores, we're gonna say right click on the stores folder and click create new store. And the Nuxt extension actually allows us to enter the name of the store. I'm gonna say that the name is user. We will create a user.ts file, and it will scaffold this store for us. Now, Pinia actually allows us to define our stores in two ways. We can come to the documentation and click on the define store link, and we'll see where we have an option stores, and the setup stores. Options are not my favorite. I go with the setup store, but you can definitely use this way of defining a store, or this way. The setup allows you to use like the ref and the newer Vue 3 syntax, but the option store allow you to do like a state, getters, actions similar to Vuex if you're familiar with Vuex. But like I said, I'm gonna focus on using the setup stores in this little walkthrough. So we jump back to VS Code, and we're gonna remove all of this, right? Because this is the options way of doing it, where we have the ID, the state, actions, getters, and all of that good stuff. If I type getters, you can see where I'm getting the autocomplete and all that. So let me just go ahead and remove this, and I'm going to export a constant that's named user store, and it's going to be equal to define store. So define store is a function that accepts as the first argument the name of the store. So I'm going to say this is called user, right? And the second parameter is a function with everything that you want to return from the store. Cool. So what am I going to have in the user store? So the user store is going to have a user, obviously. So I'm going to say ref, and that can be null, right? So we're going to have a user, and we're going to also have a token. Cool. Now for our token, it's going to be used in conjunction with the use cookie composable that comes from Nuxt, and we're gonna call this one so the first argument to the use cookie composable is the name of the cookie. So we're gonna say my cookie. Of course, you want to make this more secure. It should make more sense than my cookie. Let's see, the second argument is actually an object with the list of options that you want to use with this cookie. Now for this tutorial, we're only going to use the max age, and the max age option is the time that it will take for the cookie to expire in seconds. So I'm going to say here that it should expire within an hour. So 1 hour in seconds is 60 times 60. Cool. Next, we actually want a function to set our user and set token. So this is going to be called set token, and we're going to accept data. This can be null or undefined or a string. And what it's going to do is going to say token dot value is equal to data. And we're going to do the same for user. where we're going to say the user can be any for now, and the function is going to set the user value to whatever data is passed in. Cool. Now, within this use user store, Pinia store, we want to add a function that will actually sign the user in. So we're going to create a sign-in function. And this sign-in function is going to take the login information, which for now we're going to say this is any. And then we're going to create a try-catch block, right? So if the request to sign the user in fails, what we want to do is we want to set the token to null. So we're just going to call the set token function and pass nothing. If we pass nothing, then the parameter will be undefined and the value for the token will also be undefined. Cool. Next, we want to say set user, and we want to pass nothing to this so that we will set the user as undefined. And lastly, we want to log the error out. So we're just going to log the error right there. Now, within the try part of the function, we want to send a request to some API of the sort. So this would actually be a request to whatever API is authenticating your user. In this walkthrough, I'm going to use a dummy REST API. And if we go to dummyjson.com, we'll actually find some endpoints that we can actually hit. The one that I'm looking at for logging in is actually this login and get token endpoint that they provide. Shout out to this author, whoever the author for this is. So you can see here where it's saying to send a post request to this endpoint. So I'm just going to copy that. And we're going to jump back to VS Code and add this here. So we're going to say const res is going to equal to await, and we're going to use the fetch composable provided by Nuxt. And then we're going to say the type that's returned by this fetch request is any for now. And then we are going to say that we want the fetch request to be sent to this endpoint, the one that we just copied. And then we're going to pass options to the fetch request. Now, the method, as stated on the website, it's a post request. So we're going to copy this as well. Jump back to the code and paste that in. The method should be post. And then the data that's been sent is going to come from wherever this function is being called from. Cool. So we're going to say the body is going to be data. Save that. Now, this endpoint will actually return to us this output. So if we click on show output right here, you can see where we actually get a token back from this endpoint. Now, I want to actually create a type for this response. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this object. I'm going to go to app.quickttype.io. I'm going to paste it in, and I'm going to call this user. And you can see where it created the type for us automatically. Now I have this interface only thing checked right here. If I check, if I uncheck it, then you can see all of the different functions and stuff that the app.quickttype.io will return to us. But if I only want the type, then I can go ahead and check the interfaces only option, change this to TypeScript, of course, and then I can just either copy it like this, or I can click on copy code. Doesn't matter. So then we go back to our Nuxt application, and I'm going to create a types file. So I'm going to right click, create a new file, call it types.ts, and I'm going to paste that in here. Cool. Whether you want to use an interface or a type, doesn't matter. It's going to do the same thing. So I'm going to copy this user type from this types file. And then I'm going to go here. I'm going to say the response type should be of type user, right? Then I'm going to import it. So if we save that and hover over this response, then we can see that it's of type user. Cool. Now, once we get this response, then we're going to set the token to the token that's passed back from this user type. So we're going to say res, and we want a token property. We're going to pass that string into the set token function, and it's going to create this token and store it in a cookie called my cookie. Cool. So now we also want, after getting the token, we want to get the user details, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to create a separate function, and we're going to call this fetch customer. And this is going to be an asynchronous function. And what we're going to say is if token dot value, well, not. So if token dot value, then we want to execute this function. Cool. So we're going to wrap it in a try catch block. Now in the catch section or the catch block, if there's an error, of course, we want to set the user to undefined, and we're going to log whatever that error is. So let's save that. But if we have no problems, this is what we actually want to do. So we're going to say cons response is equal to await, and we're going to use the fetch composable again. And we are going to call this endpoint from our dummy API. So if you come down here, we have a user section, and we can get a single user, right? So we're going to actually send a request to this endpoint. So let's copy that and jump back to VS Code and paste that in here. And this is a GET request, so we don't need to pass any options. But if we get a response, we want to actually set the user with whatever is returned from this endpoint. And to have an idea of what's returned, if we click on show output on the website, you can see that we get this big object. Of course, we're not going to manually create a type for this object. So we're going to come up here, copy the output, go back over here and paste it in. And we're going to call this customer, right? And of course, we have all the interfaces. So we're going to copy them. We're going to go back to VS Code, and in our types file, we're just going to paste them right in. Hit save. And of course, we want to copy the customer interface. We're going to go back to the user store, and we're going to say that the response from this endpoint should be of type customer. Of course, we have to import this from our types. So up here, we import it and hit save. And that should be it for our fetch customer function within our user store. Now back to the sign in function, right? So after you sign in and you store the token in the cookie, we want to await the fetch customer function. So once the user signs in, we'll set the token and then get the customer information from this function. Cool. So this function is what we'll actually use to send a request to the API to get back the details of this logged in person once the token is defined, because nothing will happen in this function if this token is undefined or falsy, right? So once this is defined, then we'll send the request and set the user. Cool. Of course, we need a function to log out. So we're going to say const logout. This is going to be a function, and all this is going to do is set the token and the user values to undefined. Cool. Now, like I said at the start of creating this store, we can't use any of these unless we actually return them. So at the end of the file, we're going to say, hey, I want to return from this Pinia store the user, the token, logout function, I want the sign in function, the fetch customer function, and if you want, you can actually export the set user and set token functions. So I'm going to hit save, and that should be it for our Pinia store. Cool. Now, in order to get the user, whenever we refresh the page, we're going to create a plugin, right? So we're going to come here and let's see. Let's close these files. And in an empty space, I'm going to right click. I'm going to create another folder. Well, I don't have to. I already have the plugins folder here. So I can right click on plugins and create a new plugin. And the name of this plugin is going to be Auth. Just like that, we have the Auth plugin. Cool. So what are we going to do in this plugin? In this plugin, we are going to first make it asynchronous, right? And then we're going to bring in our store that we created here. Now, we should have auto import functionality. So we could say user store is equal to, and let me just grab the name of the store, use user store, of course. But we have this little red squiggly, and the reason why we have that is because we need to run the post install command again from Nuxt to generate the types. So I'm gonna go here in the Nuxt extension, click on the post install action, and once the types are generated, I can go ahead and hover over this, and you can see where we're actually getting the auto import functionality from Nuxt with this Pinia store, right? So what do I want to do in this plugin? So in this plugin, I'm going to say if the user is not defined, right, then we want to actually call the fetch customer function from this Pinia store. So if this person is undefined, then we're going to call the fetch customer function. And the fetch customer function, like I said earlier, if the token is defined and not falsy, then it's going to reach out to the API, get the details for the logged in person, and then set the user. Cool. So let me save that. And that's it for this plugin. So next we want to work on our pages, right? So the index page is going to be a simple page. Let's just add a little bit of styling. I'm going to say this should be a container. I want it to be a flex container. Item should be centered, justify centered, right? And inside of this, I actually want to add just a little text that says welcome. And below that, something to say, hey, to the user, sign in to your profile. And then I want a button. And this button should have the text sign in. Cool. All right, so let me add some classes to this. I'm going to add some padding left and right, padding top and bottom, add some roundness to it. I'm going to make the background emerald 500. Text is going to be white. It's going to be inline flex, item center, justify center. Let's save that. And then in the script setup part of our single file component, we're going to import our Pinia store. Now, the Pinia documentation actually tells you that you should not destructure the store when you're importing it, right? So don't do this. Don't do this type of thing. So if you want something from the store, don't do it like this. It's better if you actually do it like this, and then you call the different properties or functions that you want of this object, Cool. So we want a sign in function. So let's say const sign in. This is going to be an asynchronous function. And inside of this function, we're going to call the sign in function from our auth store. So it should be await auth store dot sign in, right? Now the sign in data, according to the dummy API website, should be this. Of course, in a real application, you'd actually create input fields to get this information from the user. But as I'm just demonstrating how Pinia works in Nuxt, I won't actually go through getting the username and password from the user via some input field. So we just copy this thing and we go back to the code and we paste it in right there. Now, if you want the help of TypeScript for these two or this parameter that should be sent to the sign-in function, you can actually just go in our types file, export an interface called login, and it's just going to be username and password. And of course, we can come into our Pinia store and say that the information that's sent to the sign-in function should be of type login. And of course, we want to press Control full stop and import it from the types file. So hit save, and then this will be typed properly, so your user doesn't just enter anything that they want to enter. Now, after sending this request to the endpoint or calling the sign-in function, we are going to navigate to a new page, right? So we want to say await navigate to, and we're going to call this page profile. And we can pass an option to the navigate to composable, and we're going to say replace should be true because we want to replace this route. Cool. So we're going to create the second profile page, right? I'm going to right click on pages, create view page. I'm going to say profile, and this profile page is going to be similar to the one to the index page here. Let me just quickly add the styles. I want it to be a container, UI5. I'm not going to make the flex container. I'm just going to say minimum height should be screen. And then inside of that, I'm going to have this H1 that says profile. And probably just a logout button. So say sign out. And I'm going to copy the styles from this button over here, paste it over here, so they look the same. Probably made this red. Yeah. All right. So on the index page, we are not currently doing anything with the sign in function. So let's add the click event to the button and call the sign in. Now, if I should run this, and go back to our website, we can see where we have welcome, sign into your profile. And let me just open the network tab to see if anything will go wrong. If I click on sign in, you can see where I got logged in. And in the network tab, we actually have the request being sent to the endpoint here. And it's returning this object. And then after logging in, I sent a request to the user's endpoint. And the response is this big object. Cool. Now, if I should come to profile in our code, Let's say I just want to dump the user on this page. I can actually come here and say const store equal to use user store, and then I could say something like pre user store user and dump that out right there. Now let me see if that will actually persist. And there it is. So this is the user from the Pinia store. Pinia also has its own extension, but it's not here right now. I would have to reload the page. But if I reload the page, you can see where the plugin is actually recreating our user. All right. So the plugin that we created earlier called auth. Once I reload the page, the user becomes undefined. And if the user is undefined, then it sends a request to, or it calls the fetch customer function. Now the fetch customer function will check if we have a token, and the token is this my cookie token. And once this is defined, then a request will be sent to the get a single user endpoint, and then the user will be populated again. Now, if we want to actually protect this profile page so that if you're not logged in, then you can't just come to the page. So if I delete the cookies here, right, and I go to the profile page, you can see where I'm being logged in, even though I cleared the cookie here. So if I click on this, you can see that I'm still on the profile page, which is not what we want. Cool. If we don't have the cookie in place, then the user shouldn't be able to access this page. So how do we fix that? Well, we fixed it with middlewares. So in VS Code, we're going to create two middlewares. The first one being already authenticated. Now, if you're already authenticated, then you should be pushed to the profile page, right? So let me go ahead and create this already auth middleware. So you can see here, we're right clicking on the middleware folder. We'll ask you for the middleware name, and then the Nuxt extension will create the file for you and add the actual defined Nuxt route middleware function to it. So we're going to make this asynchronous. And the reason why we're going to make this asynchronous is because we're going to call the await, the navigate to composable if the user is actually logged in already. So how do we check if the user is logged in already? We're going to call the user store, right? I'm going to say use user store. Then we're going to say if the user store.user is defined. So if it's truthy, that's what this double bang means. Value is true or true according to JavaScript. Then we're going to return await navigate to the profile page. Cool. So all this middleware is going to do is check if we have a user defined in the user store. And if we do, then we're going to say, hey, this middleware is registered on this page, but it's saying that if you're logged in, you shouldn't be on this page. So we're going to add this middleware to our index page. So if the user is logged in, we don't want them to click on the sign in button again. We just want to take them straight to the profile page. So we have to actually restart our server for the middleware to be registered. So we're going to just restart the server quickly. And then inside of this script setup section, we're going to say define page meta. Cool. So this composable will actually allow us to register a middleware. And we have two ways of registering middlewares. We can just use a string if we're going to use a single middleware, or we can pass in an array of middlewares. Cool. So let's save that. And if we go back to our website, page reloaded, if we click on sign in, we're taken to the profile page. But if we try to go back to that sign in page, you can see where it just redirects us to the profile page. And that's because of that middleware. So once the user is defined, we can't go back to that page. So let me just delete this, reload this page. And if I go back to the sign-in page, then I'm able to do so. Cool. And that's because now we don't actually have a user in our Pinia store. You can see it's undefined here. The token is undefined as well. Cool. So now, how do we protect the profile page? Well, it's pretty similar to what we did to protect the sign-in page. So if we go back to the code, we can right click on middleware, create a new middleware. We're going to call this one auth. So that will create the file. We're going to make this asynchronous. And then we're going to say we want the user store. So let's copy over this user store, paste it in. And here we're going to say if we don't have a user. So if not user store.user, then we want to tell a person that, hey, shouldn't be on this page. Go back to the sign-in page. So we're going to say return await, navigate to or sign-in page. In our case, the sign-in page is actually the home page, index page right here. So let's save that. And in order to use this middleware, we're going to go to the profile page. And let me just restart the server quickly. Good. So on our profile page, you want to say, hey, call the define page meta composable, and we want to register a middleware. The middleware we want to register here is auth. So if you try to come to this page, then it will actually run the auth middleware. And if you're not logged in or the user is undefined, then it will redirect you to the sign-in page. Cool. So let's jump back to the browser and see that in action. So if I enter into the URL profile, you can see where it just redirects me back to the sign-in page. I'm not allowed to see that page unless the user is defined. Cool. Now, if I click on sign in, you can see where on this side, user got defined, token got defined in the Pinia store, user store, and I'm actually seeing the user over here. Now, when I click on the sign up button, I want to actually log the user out and take them back to the sign in page. So let's jump back to VS Code and get that going. Close all of these files, and I want to open profile. So when I click this sign out button, it should actually call a sign out or logout function and kick the user back to the sign in page. So I'm going to say const sign out. This is going to be a function that calls user.logout. Cool. Now, this logout function, as we know, it will just reset the token and the user. But in addition to that, we actually want to push the user to the sign-in page. And the best way to do that is actually to use the use router composable. And we're going to call the go function here and pass in a 0. Now what this will do is basically just reload the page. And in reloading the page, we will actually trigger this middleware again. And because this middleware will check if the user is defined, and if it's not defined, it will actually kick you back to the sign-in page. You will be redirected to the sign-in page. So just to go over the flow again, this button, once we click on it, we're going to call sign out, right? And the sign out is going to say, okay, call the logout function on the user store. And the user store logout function will set the user and the token to undefined. And then once that's done, we're going to reload the page. Upon reloading the page, we're going to recall this middleware, this auth middleware. And this auth middleware is going to say, all right, let's check if the user is defined. Well, the user is not defined anymore because of this logout function. So it's going to say, oh, the user is not defined. You need to go back to this page. Cool. So let's see that in action. So go back to our page and let's refresh again. And if we click on sign out, you can see here where we're redirected to the sign in page. And if you look at the Pinia store, the user is undefined, the token is undefined. And if we try to go back, that doesn't work. And if we try to go to profile, that doesn't work. So this is how you can actually implement your own authentication. Cool. So we're going to hit sign in. User is signed in. If we try to go to the sign in page again, we get redirected to our profile. And if we click sign out, then we actually make the user and the token undefined. And then we're taken to the sign in page. So that's the Pinia module for Nuxt in a nutshell. Of course, there's a lot more to learn on the documentation. So if you want to dig in and learn about the different caveats and what to look out for, definitely check out the documentation for Pinia. You can use it just like it's telling you in the documentation here in Nuxt. They just have this Nuxt module created to make your life easier while using the package. So that's it for today. Hope you guys learned something from this video. Until next time, peace.